All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, bringing you a post-game look, instant analysis of Auburn, Washington. Looks like the Tigers are about to wrap it up, and then we will lead you into Notre Dame and Michigan in South Bend. Okay, Jake Browning on a 4th and 16 just dropped back to pass and was blasted by the Auburn defensive front. He had no shot as 3 of the Auburn blitzers, as they not only depended on the defensive front, but also brought the blitz from the safeties, were all over Jake Browning again on a 4th and 16 with 1:21 left in the game. Auburn leading 21-16 over Washington. We know what this means to both teams, especially the Huskies, in trying to get to a college football playoff later this season if everything goes as expected in the Pac-12. A huge play by the Auburn defense down the stretch here as Washington was driving just barely inside Auburn territory. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, bringing you updates throughout the day as we make it through week number 1, the first big Saturday of college football here, week number 1, and amazing action just here in the last 15 minutes with not only Washington trying to come back against Auburn here in the final few minutes, but also Penn State and Trace McSorley racing down the field, converting a 4th down in the final minute, scoring a touchdown against App State to tie the game at 38 after Appalachian State had taken a 38-31 lead after Penn State was up by 10 in the 4th quarter, and we will check in on that game as well. Welcome, everyone, into our post-game of Auburn-Washington. Still sorting a few things out concerning a possible turnover. Don't know that it necessarily matters considering that Washington was stopped on the play there. So it matters in regards to field position with 1:23 left on the clock, depending on the timeout situation. And this has been a tremendous game, regardless of where these teams go the rest of the season. Washington with a much easier path in the Pac-12 than Auburn will have in the SEC. But of course, in regards to rankings, perception for the Pac-12 in particular, the college football playoff scenario, possibly down the road if both teams take care of business in conference, this is huge. So we're waiting on a review in regards to whether Jake Browning fumbled. 1:21 left in the game, Auburn up 5. This has been an intriguing game, a very close game as we expected. Auburn's defensive and offensive lines, but especially on defense, dominated most of the first half. Washington looked completely overwhelmed, much like Alabama did to them a couple of years ago as we wait for the officials' call here and the interpretation of the play. So Auburn takes over at their own 47, 1:21 left, up 5. They should be in great shape to salt this one away. A very hard-fought win over to the Washington Huskies in what is a neutral site game, but of course Auburn with the advantage of not having to travel but 100 miles to Atlanta while Washington travels cross-country to take on one of the 10 best teams in the country. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, inviting you in. We've got a good crew on hand as we check out college football, and it's been exciting. We will check in as well. I believe Auburn's in good shape here with a 1st and 10. 1:31 is on the clock, and Washington does have, I believe, 2 of its 3 timeouts. So they will kill the clock after Auburn runs a play here to knock it down to about 1:25 on the clock. They'll instantly call a timeout. Auburn will run the 2nd down play. That'll take it down to about 1:20. Washington will call the next timeout. That will be their last timeout. Then Auburn will run the 3rd play and let it get down into about the 45 or 50-second range then. And then they'll have to punt back to Washington. So Washington should get the ball back with about 30 or 35 seconds left if Auburn does not convert the 1st down. We'll see what happens here. I'll check on Penn State and App State unless App State was able to march down the field in the final 35 seconds against Penn State, but most likely that game is going to overtime. Let me give it a look as we are going to commercial break with Auburn and Washington. So let's check out on the Big Ten Network where we've got Penn State and App State. This game should be in overtime. They're in a commercial break as well. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we've got West Virginia and Will Grier pulling away from Tennessee. That game got to 27-7. I believe Tennessee tacked on a touchdown about 5 minutes ago to make it 27-14. I will strike up the live stream to see what you guys are looking into and what has you guys excited today in college football. For me, in particular, it's the Auburn defensive front. As we expected, one of the best in college football. They should be given the game ball at the end of this game. They repeatedly maybe gave up some plays, but have held Washington out in the red zone, and they have been dominant when it's mattered up front. There was a play early fourth quarter. Jake Browning led Washington down the field, got inside the 5-yard line, and then the combination of a number of players, and Darrell Williams was the guy that recovered the fumble, but it was Nick Coe who popped the ball loose to set up Auburn in great shape and deny Washington another scoring opportunity. So this has been a game that has been plagued by miscues in the red zone, missed field goals, missed opportunities. This could be a score into the 30s, but two excellent defensive efforts by both teams when it matters down in the red zone has led to this 21-16 lead for the Tigers. And we will recap as soon as we get a final score and make sure that Auburn has wrapped this up. But Washington should get the ball back with about 35 seconds left, unless Auburn can convert the first down, of course, and then that will be the game. We see that Appalachian State and Penn State are meeting at midfield for the coin flip to start overtime, so they won't get started here for a couple minutes. So we will get back to Auburn and Washington. I would expect that not many of you are looking at me. You should be looking at football on the screen and maybe listening to me and diving into the live chat. So thanks for joining us. And we will get to some of the other results of the games earlier today that fascinated me, in particular, Texas and Maryland with the Terps winning for a second consecutive year over Hook'em Horns, this time getting the interception late in the game from Antoine Brooks on Sam Ellinger to deny Texas. This unfortunately flipped back to the West Virginia-Tennessee game. Let's get it back on Washington-Auburn. All right, Auburn's applauding. They must have stopped, or they went to a 2nd and 12 with 29 seconds left. So I believe we got an Auburn first down. So the game's over. The time is ticking off. Auburn has defeated Washington 21-16. Huge win for the SEC, huge win for Auburn, but more so a huge loss for Washington in the Pac-12. So if Washington is truly the best team in the Pac-12, as most of us believe, and this game would actually back that up based on playing Auburn cross country and basically playing them toe-to-toe, either team could have won this game. This does not prove that Auburn's better than Washington or Washington better than Auburn, but Auburn won the game, so they get credit for the win. But in terms of play on the field, it's a toss-up. So Washington most likely still the best team in the Pac-12, but this denies the Pac-12 the marquee win that it needed by its best program for the College Football Playoff Committee. So we shall see. Washington most likely needs to go undefeated down in the Pac-12 to get to the College Football Playoff. That's what this means. All right, let's get to the Big Ten Network with App State and Penn State. Then I would like to review Auburn and Washington and what stood out to me. Penn State's got the ball at the 20-yard line on App State, so they obviously got the ball first. They got 4 yards on first down, and they're running it wide, and they've got a big run by, I believe, Miles Sanders inside the 10-yard line. So Penn State off to a good start on offense with the ball against App State, 38-38. App State trying to do what it did against a top 5 to 10 team in the Big Ten 11 years ago in Ann Arbor at the Big House. You will recall it well when Michigan was lining up for the winning field goal, 34-32, App State blocked it, and that was your bowl game. App State with a huge win at that point over Michigan, one of the biggest upsets in poll history over the number 5 team in the nation. Penn State running wide. It is Miles Sanders again inside the 5-yard line with a nice run on first down to a 2nd and goal at the 3-yard line. All right, I am going to strike up the live chat. If I lose a little bit of juice on my laptop here, I'm going to have to grab the cord, and I believe I'll do that right now as we're in between plays of App State and Penn State. Hang on a second. I will at some point be setting up my desk and situation and set where I can more conveniently watch college football. Penn State scores. Miles Sanders gets the ball once again, I believe. Yes, he does. He got the ball on every play of that drive. He is the heir apparent to Saquon Barkley. He was a bit of a change-up for the Penn State Nittany Lions in place of Barkley, spot duty last season in 2017. He's the guy. He was even a bigger and better recruit in terms of the recruiting analysis coming into college football. He scores and Penn State goes up 45-38. We'll see if the Nittany Lions can do what they haven't been able to do all day, and that's stop Appalachian State, especially in the second half. Miles Sanders with a career-high 91 yards rushing in this game. Let me get to the live chat and see what you guys have to say about college football today. I would think on the foremost of your minds is Auburn holding off Washington 21-16. Really good game. I picked Auburn to win. I'm happy about that. I took Auburn minus the 2 points. They were able to pull through for me. All right, welcome everyone to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This may not be the best time to encourage you to do that because you're watching college football, but please remember to like the videos, comment on the videos, and subscribe to my channel for the best analysis in college football as we do this each and every week. Discuss college football on Saturday in depth, watch the games, and provide instant analysis. We had our first college football kickoff show prior to the noon kickoffs Eastern time with a show at 10 a.m. And then, of course, we're debating, discussing, and talking college football each and every day with you. And we are soaking this up, people. We've talked about this for 9 months. We miss college football. We miss the drama, and we've got it right here with Auburn defeating Washington on a final drive on offense, and now App State trying to grind out a win and tie up Penn State in overtime. They are now faced with a third and short after they ran it up the middle in overtime. 45-38, Penn State trying to avoid the upset. West Virginia leads Tennessee 33-14 with 14 minutes left in the game. App State coming out on a third down. We will lead you up to Notre Dame in Michigan. Game time is 7:30. Kickoff a little bit after that in the 7:40 range, of course, on NBC. All right, folks. George on the line. You know I want to talk to you, but I'm too overwhelmed by what I'm experiencing. I'll be back later. Space Mountain joins in. Great game today. We have Flat Earth Deacon. Did I get that straight? Flat Earth Deacon, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Appreciate you jumping on the line and joining us. It's the first time I've seen your name, so welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. George back on the line as well. Anybody else with any significant comments here? We got Cairo Sato. Hopefully I pronounced that right. That's the first time I've seen you on Mark Rogers TV. Auburn does this every year. Giant Killers. Drake Knapp, SEC. Bama's schedule just got stronger today. It did. It needs to get stronger, but in a sense, it doesn't. If Alabama takes care of business, regardless of what they face on the schedule, which is basically not much of anything until November, Bama is going to be in great strait. Penn State leads App State 45-38. They're in overtime. App State 3rd and 3 at the Penn State 18-yard line. So App State gets a first down. Martin Rosario, man, that Auburn game was awesome. Congrats to both. I think they have legitimate shots at the playoffs. But again, Martin, keep in mind that unless the narrative on the Pac-12 and their play in the non-conference changes dramatically over what we saw last year, they have very few opportunities now to prove themselves outside the league. Washington losing is most likely the best team in the Pac-12, losing their one big shot non-conference, even though they played extremely well. And it was right down to the wire, basically showed that they're as good as Auburn. This hurts the Pac-12 and it hurts Washington. So Washington now is the biggest Auburn fan in the country. They are rooting for Auburn to run the table in the SEC and be the best team in the country. App State is now facing fourth and short or first down. I believe they're going to have a measurement and possible review on that play. Again, Penn State leads at 45-38. We've got a move by Flat Earth Deacon to have Appalachian State join the Big Ten. Absolutely. Should have been a warm-up for Penn State if they were good. Okay, people, stop it. Do not jump to conclusions in week one. We covered that last night and the night before. Do not jump to conclusions. This is but a piece of the puzzle. It's an indication of how good these teams are. We could go through every year and we could point out losses by really good teams, and we could point out near misses against marginal opponents in the group of five or in the FCS that turned out to not be very significant, where really good teams in the Power 5, top 10 teams, top 15 teams took the hit early, or they survived it and they didn't look good and people wrote them off. And what happened weeks later? They proved to be really good teams. It's a long season. We will know more in October and November. Yes, Penn State cannot afford to trip up in this game, most likely. This would damage their college football playoff situation, but they've got a Big Ten schedule to deal with. And especially if they survive here and they just intercepted, they won the game. Penn State's fine. Now, does this cause concern in terms of the game film and what was shown on tape to Big Ten opponents and to the Pitt Panthers? Absolutely. Penn State obviously is flawed right now, flawed on defense. Let's not jump to conclusions on teams. Yes, this is an indication. It's one game. Anybody that plays the sharp money in Vegas will tell you, if there's anything that sports fans do, is that they jump to conclusions based on one result, and they are taken advantage of based on week one results. And then they jump to conclusions and they swing way over to one side and they overcompensate based on what they saw in the first week. And they take that narrative that, wow, they looked great. They look like the best team in the country. They looked awful. They suck. No, let's watch some football for a few weeks. Yes, this was not a vintage Penn State performance. They should beat App State at home by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Maybe this is indicative of Penn State not being as good as we thought. Maybe this is just an aberration. Penn State survived. They did what they needed to do. They will get better, I would assume, and they will still be a top 10 to 15 team in the nation, I believe. We'll see. I picked Penn State to go 10-2, 7-2 in the Big Ten. Drake, you are joking, of course, and we'll take it. App State would be number 2 in the Big Ten West. No, they wouldn't. USC is being slowed down by the offensive play calling. Terrible. USC struggling with UNLV today. Last score I saw was 26-14. Mark, I told you Ohio State was going to score more than 50. I said that as well. I picked them to cover the 40-point spread. I'm off to a pretty good day today, despite Penn State not covering 24. I did take Auburn -2 to cover there, and they did, winning by 5 in a huge game right there. So this is what stood out to me with Auburn and Washington. Ryan Davis comes out. He returns a punt 32 yards. Auburn's in great shape. The offense looked really good the first few drives of the game, but they could not complete the drives. So Auburn kept knocking on the door, and they could not score touchdowns after the very first touchdown, in which the PAT was botched, and they led 6-0. Auburn's defensive front dominated the first half. Washington could do very little offensively. Auburn offensively, the offensive line with 4 new starters. They did get a grad transfer from UMass, but Auburn's offensive line was the big concern coming into this game against what is typically a top 10 defense at Washington, has been the past 3 seasons. Stidham had time to throw early. He looked sharp. He looked good. He was racking up yardage. But again, Auburn continually bogged down in the red zone. Anders Carlson taking over for his brother Daniel, missed a field goal. Got to also keep in mind that while Auburn's defensive front was dominating most of the game up front, one of the best left tackles in college football, Trey Adams, missing on the Washington side. So the Huskies with a big loss there. He stayed at home. He was not able to make the trip. As I understand it, he definitely did not play. That's one of the best offensive linemen in the nation, not playing for Washington, Trey Adams today. Salvin Ahmed is quick and fast and tough and a tremendous up-and-coming back. Remember the name. Let's watch him this season. He got spot duty in relief of Myles Gaskin last year. He ripped off some big runs. He had a 22-yarder right after a penalty. They cost Auburn a series. These Washington receivers blew my mind today. They were exceptional. They didn't drop passes. They adjusted to the football. They made one-handed catches. They were exceptional in tight coverage against the Auburn secondary. Aaron Fuller made a diving catch inside the 10-yard line that set up the first score for Washington. Ty Jones made a tremendous one-handed catch in which he extended his body and caught the back half of the football. Ty Jones only caught 7 passes last year. I looked up the numbers for these Huskies receivers, and they were in replacing the likes of Dante Pettis. Didn't play a whole lot. Were not prolific last year. We talked about it when we did our Washington preview and prediction. These Washington receivers would be counted upon with little playing time last year to step up, and they did today. Did you see time and time again? They were throwing the back shoulder, and Browning was not on target necessarily with the back shoulder. These wide receivers would stop. They'd turn. They adjusted the football. They'd dive and catch it before they went out of bounds. It was not just one. It was Aaron Fuller. Again, it was Quentin Pounds. It was, I mentioned the other kid, Ty Jones, as well. In the second and third quarters, they were tearing up the Auburn secondary. Jones a number of times on Jamel Dean, who was out there, poor guy playing with a cast on his hand. All right, Myles Gaskin with a big run, following one of the pass interference calls on Auburn, which converted a third down, which was key, set up the Washington offense at the 50-yard line. Then Myles Gaskin ripped off a 25-yard run and set the Washington record for all-time rushing in a career. So congratulations to Myles Gaskin. We saw it coming. But just a few plays later, as we mentioned, both teams blew opportunities in the red zone, and mostly it was the defensive play. It wasn't the offense blowing it. These are two really good defenses. Nick Coe popped Jake Browning. You could say that maybe Washington got a little bit too cute at the 3-yard line. They went with the option play. Browning did not get the ball out of his hands in time to the running back. Nick Coe popped it loose. Darrell Williams gets the fumble recovery. That denied Washington. That was key to this game because there was about 9 or 10 minutes left in the game at that point. Peyton Henry did kick the field goal on the next drive off the upright, and he apparently does that all the time. He's a bit shaky, and Chris Peterson had said, I am concerned about the field goal kicking when asked about his confidence in his place kicker. So he did not try to toe the company line there. But Peyton Henry did drive home the field goal to make it 16-15. That set up the final Auburn offensive drive that mattered, in which they had to score. There was no Auburn run game for the most part in most of this game. They did put it together down near the goal line when the freshman, Jatarvius Whitlow, he's got a nickname. What is his nickname? I missed it. Jatarvius Whitlow, just a freshman, really packed a punch on that final carry of the game in which he took it from about the 8-yard line, and he got great run blocking, but then he blasted ahead. He took on 2 defenders, a safety and a linebacker near the goal line, and just blasted them into the end zone. Auburn with a failed 2-point attempt on the touchdown, but it didn't matter. They win over Washington 21-16. So What I take from this is that Jarrett Stidham's a good quarterback. He's limited, but he's a good quarterback. Very, very good quarterback. He's one of the 10 or 15 best in the country. Jake Browning, very similar. He even said, they had a quote from him at the beginning of the game that was taken from their preparation on ABC. Jake Browning said, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to be selected as the first quarterback with arm talent, with ability, with a high ceiling, but I show up and I make the plays on game day. That's exactly right. Both quarterbacks a bit overwhelmed by the pass rush, especially Jake Browning. We saw it on the final play, the final meaningful play of the game, in which Washington had the 4th and 16 trying to convert, and the Auburn defensive front did what it did the entire game, dominated. Dontavius Russell, Marlon Davidson, Darrell Williams, the linebackers, we extended out to the front 7. Nick Coe, they are loaded. Waves of defensive linemen that will play at the next level. Auburn has a chance to do big things in the SEC. I picked them to go 9-3. They do have to fix the running game. There are some issues there. They do have some play in the secondary that's a bit spotty as well. For Washington, I'm extremely impressed with the wide receivers, as I mentioned, with Fuller and Jones and Pounds. They were really, really, really good. Also, Bacella, who had 16 receptions last year, he's going to be a main contributor here in 2018. The field goal kicking a bit shaky for the Huskies in particular. Anders Carlson kicked a 53-yarder. He missed from in close on his first attempt, but was fine after that for Auburn. And this kid, Ahmed, again, he averaged 6.4 yards per carry in relief of Myles Gaskin last season, and he's ready to take over anytime Myles needs a break. Ahmed, boy, he's quick in the hole. He's fast, he's jittery, and he's tough as well. Washington is really good. Both of these teams are loaded across the board. Give the win to the Auburn defensive front as the Tigers win it 21-16. All right, Buckeye State Sports jumping on board. Penn State nearly pulled a Michigan. You were probably watching the game. Of course, we were going play-by-play here in overtime as Trace McSorley threw for 230 yards, ran for 53 with 3 total touchdowns. Miles Sanders, as we mentioned, 91 yards. That's a career high. KJ Hamler for Penn State caught the game winner. Actually caught the game tire. The points that tied the game, 38 all, and sent it into overtime with a play across the seam over the middle from Trace McSorley. Rashawn Gary will get his mom some QB. Okay, whatever that means, George, we'll take it. All right. All right, Rashawn Gary and company go to South Bend. They're right there. They're ready to kick here in about 10 minutes. We should get to that game as well. I will lead you up to kickoff, and we will take it from there. And we all want to settle in, I believe, and watch Notre Dame and Michigan. Alabama and Louisville, I believe, have already started. Have they not? I thought that was a 7 o'clock game. My thoughts are that Alabama is going to win this game fairly handily and cover 24 points. No, it's still Cincinnati, UCLA. And we're coming up again on kickoff in South Bend. Notre Dame hosting Michigan. We've been waiting for this game for quite some time. I wanted to touch on the Texas-Maryland game. So late in the game, Texas made some mistakes after they went down 24-7. Then they roared back for a 28-24 lead, 29-24. They were driving with 2.5 minutes left to play. Their running back Watson fumbled. Remember that, similar to a number of games, including Ohio State and Oregon State, and also the Tennessee-West Virginia game, There was lightning. There was a storm that went through the area. They delayed the game for about 2.5 hours, I believe, was the time. They came back, and the field was drenched. It was sloppy. It was rain-filled, and that caused obvious issues with the footing and with the ball handling. So the Texas running back Watson fumbled with 2.5 minutes left. They were at about midfield, trailing at that point 34-29 after Maryland had taken the lead. Looked like that might be the end of the game, but Texas still had its timeout, stopped the Terps. Brandon Jones made a really excellent punt return in which Maryland was trying to pin Texas deep. He ran it out from the 5 to the 35. Sam Ehlinger threw some nice passes, made some nice moves, particularly on a 4th and 6 in which he was boxed into the pocket. He escaped the rush, escaped some would-be sackers, flushed out, threw a ball, pinpoint accuracy, completed the first down, converted it. And a couple plays later, still a minute left in the game, still plenty of time for Texas. 3rd down and 10, so there is a bit of a pressure there to convert the first down and not put yourself in a situation where it's 4th and 10. But Sam Ehlinger with an ill-advised pass with 3 Maryland defenders in the area threw the interception to Antoine Brooks. Dumb decision by Ehlinger, throws the interception with 1 minute left to play. Texas loses to Maryland for a second consecutive year, this time at 34-32. So Texas once again starts out with a loss to Maryland for a second consecutive season. They will play USC in a few weeks. That game actually might be, I don't believe it's next week. USC has Stanford. I believe it's in 2 weeks, as USC has to go to Stanford, then turn around and play Texas on the road. Back-to-back road games for USC coming up, but they will face a Texas squad that will have at least 1 loss. All right, Mark. Big Ten and Pac both look like crap as usual. When will people learn? Clemson alum 98, all due respect. Do not be making narratives out of one game. It makes absolutely no sense. And the Pac-12 looks like garbage because of what? Because Washington traveled cross-country and played Auburn toe-to-toe. They didn't travel cross-country and lose 45-10. That game was a toss-up. I don't know who the better team is. I know who won the game, but I don't know who the better team is. Auburn didn't prove to be the better team. Washington did not prove to be inferior to maybe the best team in the SEC, maybe the second best or the third best, what I would consider to be the third best myself at this point. So anybody making conclusions out of this season after watching 1 week, I am hoping that your excuse is that this is the first college football season you've ever watched, because otherwise you would be foolish and stupid to make a conclusion about any team based on the first week of the season. So you do know Auburn is the best team in the nation. Well, they could be. They could be. They may be ranked number 1 in the Mark Rogers TV poll this week because of what they did against a projected top 10 team. I think I explained my top 25 approach a few nights ago when I explained I do not rank these teams based on what we all believe, their quality, their value. I do it based on the resume. Therefore, you're going to see Maryland ranked very high in the poll. You're going to see Auburn ranked extremely high in the poll, maybe number 1 in the country. We'll see what happens with Notre Dame and Michigan. We'll see if Alabama is truly dominant. I mean, puts down the hammer tonight against Louisville. Otherwise, it's a decent win against the Louisville team that's probably going to finish around 8-4. All right, we've got Michigan coming out of the tunnel. We've got Notre Dame as well. We've got a number of people on the line, about 51. That's good to see. We talked a lot of Auburn, Washington, really broke that down. So if you're joining us just here in the last few minutes, as soon as we get off the line to enjoy Notre Dame and Michigan and also Alabama, Louisville, or whatever game you're enjoying. If your particular team's kicking off here in the next several hours, whether it's Nebraska taking on Akron and you're going to be watching your particular game, obviously the focus for us here at Mark Rogers TV is going to be Notre Dame, Michigan, number 1, Alabama, Louisville, number 2. And we'll see what we've got coming up late night. I know that Arizona's taking on BYU, but most likely we'll come back. We will be back tonight. Definitely. You can count on it. I will be back after Notre Dame, Michigan. We will keep our eye on the West Coast games. I can't guarantee that I'm going to come back at 2:30 in the morning and talk Auburn or talk Arizona, BYU, or any of the West Coast games late tonight, but don't put it past me because I've done it many times and did it most weeks last year. Brian Kelly going with the Kelly Green smock, blazer, windbreaker. It's not a good look. Brian, put it away. Go with the dark colors. Go with the dark colors, Coach Kelly. The dark colors would be the best route for you, middle-aged gentleman, middle-aged football coach with a bit of a pot belly. Let's tone it down and go with the dark colors. Jim Harbaugh knows it's always the maize and the blue. So Notre Dame fans, you messed up the wardrobe, but let's win the game. And I see that that's the color of choice for the entire team and the personnel on the sidelines. They're going with the Kelly Green. It's, of course, a classic Notre Dame look. And that seems to be the color of choice in the crowd as well. So there must have been some kind of a color statement made about what everybody's supposed to wear for the Michigan game. Brian Kelly in his 9th season, he has been close to the college football playoff, most notably last season, and then also especially in 2015, in which they lost to Stanford the final game of the season by a last-second field goal. Otherwise, they would have most likely been in the college football playoff. So 9 seasons for him. Of course, they went to the BCS championship game and were embarrassed in 2012 to Alabama 42-14. We got Mike Tirico. We got Doug Flutie in the booth. We've got Notre Dame and Michigan. Would love to hear what you guys have to say about any of your impressions about college football today. I took in Ohio State, Oregon State for the first half. The Buckeyes scoring 77 on the day. They also had a weather delay, and obviously with the Buckeyes leading by anywhere from 4 to 5 to 6 touchdowns, it was not necessarily a priority. Ohio State did get ripped up on defense at times. The defense up front was dominant, sacking the quarterback, but the secondary got chewed up in this game by Oregon State time and time again, as the Beavers did put up 31 points against the Buckeyes at the Shoe. North Carolina and Cal looking very strong against North Carolina, led that game last I checked at 17-3. USC was struggling with UNLV at 26-14. Texas loses again for a second consecutive season to Maryland, this time in FedEx Field as Sam Ehlinger throws an interception to Antoine Brooks to close out the deal for the Terps as they win one. A very emotional setting there at the beginning of the game concerning what Maryland has had to endure as a football team, both going back to the spring with the loss of a teammate and then also with the allegations against their head coach, DJ Durkin. As we get set and the scenic view from up high there in South Bend. Also, we want to take note before I let you go of the tremendous quarterback and wide receiver play by the Ole Miss Rebels today in tearing up Texas Tech 47-27. So I heard from a number of Texas Tech fans who were critical of me predicting Texas Tech would finish 5-7 this year, that they had this great defense coming back with 10 starters and they were going to be phenomenal. And they got completely shredded by Ole Miss. Now, they did face one of the 15 to 20 best offenses in college football, most likely today. So Texas Tech will have better days, but they are not a good defense. They're a decent defense, maybe a marginal defense. They are not a good defense. And I was extremely impressed again with the likes of A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, and also, of course, DeMarcus Lodge as well. The Ole Miss receiving core and Jordan Ta'amu. tearing that Texas Tech team to shreds, winning 47-27. My prediction log at this point is looking decent, as I did miss the Texas game. I picked them to cover Maryland by 13. I did take Ole Miss to beat Texas Tech and cover the 2 points. Tennessee not looking good right now, down 3 scores to West Virginia. I'll go through the predictions sometime later as we get you set for Michigan and Notre Dame. If any of you guys have thoughts on what we talked about just now, please leave them in the comments section. We'll be back later tonight to talk Notre Dame, Michigan, to talk Alabama, Louisville, and anything else you want to talk about in college football week 1 Saturday as we look ahead to LSU and Miami, Florida State, and Virginia Tech as well. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and get your family and friends on board right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Enjoy the action tonight, and we'll see you soon.